The old cargo ship drifted silently through the darkness of space, its hull gleaming with strange patterns that seemed to move and shift like living metal. Traffic control at Jupiter Station couldn't believe their eyes. The star Voyager, missing for 50 years, had just appeared out of nowhere on their scanners, floating peacefully as if it had never vanished. "Sir, you need to see this," the young controller's voice shook as he called his supervisor. "The readings, they're impossible. The ship's structure, it's made of materials we've never seen before." The rescue team approached cautiously, their ship's lights illuminating the massive vessel. Where there should have been rust and decay, they found smooth surfaces that rippled like water. The ship's original registration numbers were still visible, but they were now surrounded by strange, glowing symbols that pulsed with an inner light. As they prepared to board, their instruments detected a single life sign. One survivor, in a ship that had vanished with a crew of 300. The rescue team cut through the airlock, their boots touching down on floors that hummed with hidden energy. The air inside was fresh, not stale as it should have been after 50 years. They found him in the engine room, old Joe Chen, the ship's engineer. He sat calmly in his chair, looking exactly as he had in the crew photo taken the day before the Star Voyager disappeared. Not a day older. Not a single gray hair added to his head. "Took you folks long enough," he said with a slight smile, his eyes carrying the weight of centuries despite his unchanged appearance. "I've got quite a story to tell, and you're going to want to sit down for this one." The rescue team stood frozen, staring at the engine room around them. Where there should have been standard fusion drives, they saw crystalline structures that defied physics. Energy flowed through transparent conduits like liquid light, powering systems that their scanners couldn't even begin to understand. "The ship," old Joe said, patting the wall affectionately, "she's different now. We're both different. And once I tell you where we've been and what we've seen." He paused, his eyes growing distant. "Everything is going to change. Everything." Behind him, a holographic display sprang to life, showing star patterns that didn't match any known galaxy. Symbols danced across the screen, mathematics that made the rescue team's scientists gasp in disbelief. "But before I explain," old Joe continued, his voice growing serious, "you need to understand something. We didn't just get lost out there. We were chosen. And what we learned, what we brought back, it's either going to save the galaxy, or tear it apart." The Star Voyager's hull hummed, as if agreeing with its engineer's words. And in that moment, as the rescue team stood in that impossible engine room, they knew they were standing at the edge of a new era in human history. The real question was, were they ready for what old Joe Chen was about to tell them? The story of the Star Voyager was about to begin. And nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. 50 years earlier, the Star Voyager moved steadily through the outer edges of known space. The massive cargo ship carried supplies to the distant mining colonies, a routine mission like dozens before. In the ship's crowded mess hall, laughter echoed off the metal walls as the crew shared their evening meal. Old Joe Chen sat at his usual corner table, surrounded by sketches and calculations on his tablet. His weathered hands moved quickly across the screen, making adjustments to his designs while his coffee grew cold. The younger engineers called him Dream Maker behind his back, not entirely kindly because of his strange ideas about space travel. "Still working on your impossible engine, Joe?" Captain Lee asked, sliding into the seat across from him. She was a good captain, tough but fair, with 20 years of experience guiding ships through the dangers of deep space. "Not impossible," Joe replied, not looking up from his work. "Just not possible yet." His fingers traced the outline of an engine design that broke all the rules they'd learned at the Space Academy. "The math works, Captain. We're just missing something. Some key that would make it all fit together." The ship's lights flickered briefly, drawing concerned glances from the crew. These supply runs took them far from help, and equipment failures could be deadly. But the light steadied, and conversations resumed. "Chief Engineer Roberts wants you to focus on the actual engines," the captain said gently. "The ones currently keeping us alive out here." Joe nodded, but his eyes stayed on his designs. He'd spent 30 years in space, watching humanity crawl from planet to planet at speeds that made the galaxy seem impossibly vast. There had to be a better way. The mess hall slowly emptied as crews headed for their shifts. Joe gathered his tablets, his mind still working on the problems that kept him awake at night. As he walked through the ship's corridors, he ran his hand along the wall, feeling the vibrations of the engines. The Star Voyager was a good ship, solid and reliable, but to Joe's mind, she could be so much more. In his small cabin, star charts covered the walls. Not the official navigation charts everyone used, but his own calculations, tracking patterns he'd observed over decades in space. Patterns that suggested the universe didn't work quite the way everyone thought it did. A soft chime from his computer interrupted his thoughts. The ship's sensors had detected something unusual ahead, a slight distortion in space that didn't match any known phenomena. Most crews would have logged it and continued their journey. But Joe felt a strange excitement as he studied the readings. He hurried to the bridge, his tablet clutched tightly. The distortion was growing stronger, its energy signature unlike anything in their databases. The navigation officer, young and by the book, was already plotting a course around it. "Wait," Joe said, his voice carrying the authority of his years. He connected his tablet to the main display, overlaying his theoretical calculations onto the sensor readings. "Look at these patterns. They match exactly. This could be what we've been missing." Captain Lee studied the display, her expression troubled. "We're not a research vessel, Joe. We have deliveries to make, schedules to keep." "Captain," Joe's voice was quiet but intense, "in all my years in space, I've never seen anything like this. What if this is our chance to learn something new? Something that could change everything?" The bridge crew watched the exchange silently. They'd all heard Joe's theories about faster space travel, about hidden dimensions and energy patterns that could revolutionize human exploration. Most thought he was just an old dreamer who'd spent too much time in deep space. But as they watched the strange distortion grow larger on their screens, even the skeptics felt a hint of wonder. The Star Voyager had a choice to make: play it safe and continue their routine mission, or take a chance that could change the course of human history. Captain Lee looked at her old friend, seeing the same passion that had driven him for decades. She made her decision. "Plot an approach course," she ordered. "But we maintain safe distance. First sign of danger, we pull back." The Star Voyager adjusted its course, moving closer to the mysterious phenomenon. None of the crew knew it then, but they were about to embark on a journey that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the universe. And old Joe Chen, the dreamer who never stopped believing in impossible things, was about to be proven right in ways he could never have imagined. The Star Voyager's engines hummed as they approached the strange distortion. On the bridge, tension filled the air. The phenomenon grew larger on their screens, shimmering like a heat wave in space, bending starlight around its edges in impossible ways. "Energy readings are off the charts," the science officer reported, his fingers dancing across his console. "It's like nothing in our database. The patterns keep shifting, but there's something ordered about them." Old Joe stood at his station, his eyes darting between the main display and his own calculations. His hands trembled slightly as he made adjustments. "The mathematical sequence," he whispered. "It matches my theories exactly. This isn't random, it's a gateway." Captain Lee leaned forward in her chair. "A gateway to where?" Before Joe could answer, the ship shuddered. Warning lights flashed across every console. The distortion was growing, its edges reaching out like tendrils of light toward the Star Voyager. "Full reverse," Captain Lee ordered. "Get us out of here." The engines roared as they tried to pull away, but the ship moved sluggishly, as if caught in an invisible current. The crew worked frantically at their stations, but nothing they did seemed to make a difference. "The energy patterns," Joe called out, his voice rising with excitement rather than fear. "They're resonating with our engine frequency. Captain, if we adjust our power output to match the pattern, that could tear the ship apart." Chief Engineer Roberts shouted from his station. But Joe was already moving, his old hands sure and steady as they flew across his console. "Trust me," he said softly. "Just this once, trust me." Captain Lee hesitated for just a moment. In 20 years of command, she'd learned to trust her instincts. Right now, those instincts were telling her to listen to the old engineer who'd spent his life chasing dreams. "Do it," she ordered. Joe made the final adjustments. The ship's engines changed their pitch, harmonizing with the strange energy surrounding them. The shuddering stopped. On the main screen, the distortion seemed to stabilize, its chaotic patterns settling into a structured form. "It's beautiful," someone whispered. The Star Voyager hung suspended in space, wrapped in streams of energy that pulsed with colors humans had never seen before. The ship's systems began to respond in strange ways, displays showing readings that should have been impossible. And then it happened. Space itself seemed to fold around them, like a piece of paper being carefully creased. Stars stretched into lines of light, and reality itself seemed to blur at the edges. "Joe," Captain Lee's voice was barely a whisper. "What's happening to my ship?" The old engineer stood transfixed, watching as his lifetime of theories played out before him. "We're about to find out if I was right," he said. "About everything." The final fold completed. There was a moment of absolute silence, a heartbeat where the entire universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a flash of light that burned itself into the memories of everyone on the bridge, the Star Voyager vanished. They reappeared in darkness. Not the familiar darkness of known space, filled with distant stars and recognized constellations. This was different. The stars here were wrong, too bright, too close, arranged in patterns that no human had ever seen. Emergency systems kicked in automatically, stabilizing the ship's functions. But as the crew stared out at the impossible view before them, they knew nothing in their training had prepared them for this. "Location?" Captain Lee demanded. The navigation officer shook his head slowly. "Unknown, Captain. None of these stars match our charts. According to our position readings." He paused, double-checking his instruments. "We're nowhere. Or everywhere. The readings don't make sense." Old Joe moved to the main viewport, pressing his hand against the cold glass. His eyes were wet with tears, but he was smiling. "Not nowhere," he said. "Somewhere new. Somewhere humanity has never been before." As if in response to his words, something massive moved in the darkness ahead of him. Something that made the Star Voyager, one of the largest ships humanity had ever built, feel as small as a dust mote in comparison. First contact was about to begin. And the true purpose of their journey was about to be revealed. The massive shape that moved through the strange darkness gradually came into view. It defied description, a structure that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the human mind could comprehend. Parts of it appeared and disappeared as if dancing between different layers of reality. "It's a ship," Old Joe breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. "But not like anything we've ever built." The alien vessel dwarfed the Star Voyager, its surface rippling with the same kind of energy that had pulled them through space. As the crew watched, a beam of soft light extended from the massive ship, gently enveloping their vessel. "No hostile readings," the security officer reported, though his hand stayed near the weapons control. "They're scanning us, I think. But the energy signature is unlike any scan I've ever seen." Captain Lee stood from her chair, her posture straight and proud. If this was humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization, she would face it with dignity. "Open all frequencies," she ordered. "Let's try to." She never finished her sentence. The bridge disappeared around them. One moment they were standing at their stations, the next they found themselves in a vast chamber that seemed to stretch forever in all directions. The floor beneath their feet was solid but transparent, showing layers upon layers of technology that moved like living things. The bridge crew huddled together, their training holding despite their fear. Old Joe stepped forward, his eyes drinking in every detail of their surroundings. They weren't alone. Beings moved through the chamber, or perhaps the chamber moved around them. They shifted and changed as they approached, as if trying to find a form that human minds could comprehend. Finally, they settled into tall, luminescent shapes that were almost humanoid, but not quite. "We have waited," a voice spoke in their minds. Not in words exactly, but in concepts and images that somehow formed themselves into understanding. "We have watched. And now, at last, you have found your way to us. Who are you?" Captain Lee asked, her voice steady despite the strangeness of it all. "We are the Guardians," the response came. "We exist in the spaces between spaces, in the folds of reality that your kind has only begun to dream of." The beings turned their attention to old Joe. "But you have seen it, haven't you? In your calculations, in your dreams. You've glimpsed the truth of what space really is." Joe stepped forward, his lifetime of theories suddenly crystallizing into understanding. "The patterns," he said. "The way space folds. The energy that connects everything. I've been seeing pieces of it all my life, but I never had the tools to prove it. Your species is young," the Guardians continued. "But unique. In all our watching, we have never seen minds quite like yours. You dream. You imagine. You see patterns where others see only chaos. And now, we need that gift more than ever." The chamber shifted, and suddenly they were surrounded by images of destruction on a cosmic scale. Entire galaxies being consumed by something dark and hungry, something that devoured not just matter and energy, but reality itself. "The void," the Guardians explained. "It feeds on the order of the universe, breaking down the very laws that hold reality together. We have fought it for eons, but we are beings of pure order. We cannot think in the ways needed to defeat it. But humans can," old Joe said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Because we can imagine the impossible. We can think outside the patterns." "Yes." The chamber shifted again, returning to its original form. "Your ship was not chosen by accident. We have been watching you, waiting for the right moment, the right minds. We offer you a choice. Help us fight the void, learn our ways, combine them with your unique human perspective. Or return to your known space, to the life you knew before." Captain Lee looked at her crew, seeing the same mix of fear and wonder on their faces that she felt herself. They had families back home, duties, responsibilities. But they also had a chance to save not just humanity, but all of existence. "If we help you," she asked, "what exactly would that mean?" The Guardians moved closer, their forms shimmering. "We would teach you. Share our understanding of space and reality. Help you transform your ship into something that could fight the void. But it would take time. And when you return home, if you return home, everything will have changed." The crew looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. They had all joined the space service to explore, to push the boundaries of human knowledge. Now they had a chance to push those boundaries further than anyone had ever dreamed. Old Joe stepped forward again, his voice firm. "Teach us," he said. "Show us what you know. Let us help." The Guardians seemed to pulse with approval. "Then let us begin," they said. "There is much to learn, and the void grows stronger with each passing moment." And so began the transformation of the Star Voyager and her crew. They were about to learn that the universe was far stranger, far more wonderful, and far more dangerous than humanity had ever imagined. Time moved strangely in the Guardians' realm. The crew of the Star Voyager lost track of days and weeks as they immersed themselves in learning. The Guardians' knowledge poured into their minds like a gentle stream, transforming their understanding of reality itself. Old Joe worked tirelessly in the engine room, which had become a fusion of human engineering and Guardian technology. His hands moved across systems that looked more like artwork than machinery. "It's all connected," he explained to Captain Lee during one of their rare quiet moments. "Everything I theorized about, but couldn't quite grasp. The Guardians aren't just teaching us technology, they're teaching us to see reality the way they do." The Star Voyager itself was changing. The Guardians' energy flowed through the ship's hull, transforming ordinary metal into something alive with possibility. Corridors shifted and reformed, creating spaces that existed in multiple dimensions at once. The crew adapted, learning to navigate their new reality with growing confidence. "Look at this," Joe said, pointing to what had once been a standard engine display. Now it showed swirling patterns of energy that seemed to move with a purpose. "We're not just building a better engine. We're teaching the ship to think. To dream." But not all the news was good. Through the Guardians, they learned more about the Void. They saw recordings of its attacks, entire civilizations vanishing into nothingness, leaving behind only empty space where vibrant worlds had once existed. The Void wasn't just destroying matter, it was unraveling the very fabric of existence. "We don't understand why your species can perceive things differently," one of the Guardians explained during a teaching session. "Your minds are flexible. You can hold contradictory ideas at once. You can imagine things that cannot exist, and in imagining them, sometimes make them real. We need this ability." The crew learned to manipulate energy in ways that defied their old understanding of physics. They learned to see beyond the simple dimensions of space and time, to perceive the layers of reality that the Guardians inhabited. But most importantly, they learned to combine this new knowledge with human intuition and creativity. During their moments of rest, they gathered in the mess hall, which now seemed to float in space itself, the walls transparent to the strange stars around them. They talked about home, about their families, wondering how much time was passing in normal space. The Guardians couldn't give them a precise answer. Time moved differently here, folded back on itself in complex ways. "We're doing the right thing," Captain Lee would remind them during these moments of homesickness. "If the Void isn't stopped, there won't be a home to return to." One day, if days could be counted in this place, the Guardians called them all together. The chamber they gathered in pulsed with urgent energy. "The Void approaches," the Guardians announced. "Sooner than we expected. A neighboring galaxy has fallen. You must be ready soon." The crew watched in horror as the Guardians showed them the Void's latest attack. It was like watching a time-lapse of decay, but on a cosmic scale. Stars winked out one by one, not exploding or dying, but simply ceasing to exist. The laws of physics themselves seemed to unravel in the Void's wake. "Our ship," Captain Lee asked, "will it be ready?" Old Joe stepped forward, his face grave but determined. "The modifications are nearly complete. The Star Voyager isn't just a ship anymore, she's becoming something new. Something that exists partially in Guardian space and partially in normal space." But what?" the captain prompted. "The power requirements," Joe hesitated. "To fight something like the Void, to use the technologies we've created, it will require more energy than we can safely contain. Using it might destroy us in the process." The Guardians' forms flickered with what might have been concern. "We cannot ask you to sacrifice yourselves. The choice must be yours." The crew looked at each other, years of trust and friendship passing between them in silent glances. They had come too far to turn back now. "Show us what else we need to learn," Captain Lee said firmly. "We'll find a way to make it work." The Guardians began their final lessons, teaching the crew the most dangerous and powerful of their technologies. The Star Voyager hummed with new energy, its transformed hull glowing with internal light. Time was running out, and the fate of countless galaxies would soon rest in human hands. The Star Voyager's transformation was nearly complete. The once simple cargo ship now looked like something from a dream. Its hull rippled with living metal, corridors expanded into impossible spaces, and the engine room had become a cathedral of light and energy. Old Joe spent every waking moment fine-tuning the hybrid systems they'd created. He discovered that his impossible engine designs actually worked perfectly with Guardian technology. Human creativity, combined with their advanced science, had created something entirely new. "The power flow is stabilizing," he explained to the engineering team, pointing to streams of energy that curved through the air like ribbons of light. "But look here, see how the human and Guardian technologies aren't just working together? They're evolving. Learning from each other." The crew had changed too. Months of working with Guardian technology had altered them in subtle ways. They could see energy patterns in the air, understand complex dimensional mathematics that would have seemed like magic before. But they kept their human hearts, their ability to think in ways the Guardians couldn't. Captain Lee stood in her new bridge, which now resembled a sphere of transparent crystal. Stars wheeled around them in patterns that made more sense than ever before. "Status report," she called out. "The new sensor arrays are online," her science officer reported. "We can track the void's movements through 11 dimensions now." It's getting closer." The captain nodded grimly. They'd been preparing for this moment, but the reality of facing such an enormous threat still weighed heavily on them all. Old Joe entered the bridge, his face showing both excitement and concern. "Captain, you need to see this." He waved his hand, and a holographic display filled the air around them. The ships learned something new. The display showed complex energy patterns, like nothing they'd seen before. "The Star Voyager," Joe explained, his voice filled with wonder, "she's not just responding to our commands anymore. She's starting to think for herself." The combination of human ingenuity and Guardian technology has created something alive. As if responding to his words, the ship's lights pulsed gently. The crew felt a warm sensation, like a friendly greeting. "Is this safe?" Captain Lee asked, though she already felt she knew the answer. The ship's presence in their minds was gentle, familiar. "Safe?" Joe laughed softly. "Nothing about what we're doing is safe. But it might be exactly what we need. The void destroys by breaking down the patterns that hold reality together. But our ship, she can adapt, change her patterns, think in ways even the Guardians didn't expect." A Guardian appeared among them, its form shimmering with urgency. "The void has changed course," it announced. "It moves toward a cluster of young galaxies. Billions of developing civilizations will be lost if we cannot stop it." The crew looked to their captain. They'd trained for this, prepared for this, but now the moment had come. Everything they'd learned would be put to the test. "Show us," Captain Lee commanded. The bridge filled with a real-time view of the void's approach. It was like watching a cancer spread through space itself, leaving empty nothingness in its wake. The sight filled them with a deep, primal fear, but also with determination. "The power systems," Joe warned, "they're still unstable. If we push them too hard, try to channel too much energy." "We knew the risks when we started," the captain replied. "Every one of us chose to stay, to fight." She looked around at her crew, seeing the same resolve in their eyes. "Begin the power-up sequence." The Star Voyager hummed to life around them, but it was unlike any power-up they'd ever experienced. Energy flowed not just through the ship's systems, but through the crew themselves, connecting them all in a web of light and thought. As they prepared for their first real battle with the void, old Joe touched the ship's wall gently. "You know what to do," he whispered, and felt the ship's warm response in his mind. They had created something miraculous together, human and Guardian technology, merged into something greater than either could have achieved alone. Now they would find out if it was enough to save the galaxy. The Star Voyager moved through folded space, approaching the void. From the crystalline bridge, the crew watched as reality itself seemed to unravel before them. Where the void touched, stars simply ceased to exist, leaving behind empty patches in the fabric of space. "All systems charged," old Joe reported from his station. The engineering console now floated in front of him, displays showing energy patterns that would have been incomprehensible months ago. "The ship's ready. She knows what's at stake." Captain Lee felt the Star Voyager's consciousness brush against her mind, sharing its determination. The ship had become more than just a vessel, it was a part of them now, a living thing born from the marriage of human spirit and Guardian wisdom. "The void's noticed us," the science officer called out. "It's changing direction. Moving to intercept." They watched as the darkness turned toward them. It moved like a living thing, but wrong somehow, like watching a film played backwards and inside out at the same time. Reality twisted around its edges, laws of physics breaking down in its wake. "Launch the first pulse," Captain Lee ordered. Energy gathered at the Star Voyager's bow, building into a sphere of pure possibility. Unlike normal weapons that destroyed, this was designed to reinforce the patterns of reality that the void sought to unravel. The ship released the pulse, sending it straight into the approaching darkness. For a moment, nothing happened. Then they saw it, where the pulse hit, stars reappeared. Reality strengthened, pushing back against the nothingness. But the victory was brief. The void absorbed the restored space, growing stronger. "It's adapting," Joe shouted. "Learning from our attack. We need more power." The ship responded instantly, channeling more energy through its hybrid systems. The crew felt the strain through their mental connection. The Star Voyager was pushing itself to its limits. They launched pulse after pulse, each one different, each one carrying the unique signature of human creativity, combined with guardian precision. Sometimes they succeeded in pushing the void back, but it always recovered, always adapted. "We can't keep this up," the engineering officer warned. "The power core is reaching critical levels." Old Joe's hands flew across his console, making adjustments. "We're thinking too linearly," he said suddenly. "Fighting it head-on isn't working. We need to think like humans again, do something unexpected." Captain Lee understood immediately. "The ship's alive now," she said. "It can think in ways neither humans nor guardians can. We need to let it try something new." She closed her eyes, reaching out through their shared connection. The rest of the crew did the same, joining their minds with the ship's consciousness. They felt its thoughts, its ideas forming in ways that transcended normal understanding. The Star Voyager began to move in impossible ways, its hull shifting and changing. It wasn't just firing energy pulses anymore, it was rewriting the rules of space around itself. Where the void brought chaos and destruction, the ship brought new patterns, new possibilities. But the power drain was enormous. Warning signals flashed across every console. The crew felt the ship's pain through their connection, felt the strain of channeling so much energy. "The core can't take much more," Joe warned, his voice tight with concern. "We're burning through our systems faster than they can repair themselves." The void pressed closer, trying to engulf them. The crew fought back with everything they had, pouring their own life energy into the ship's systems. Human determination combined with guardian technology in one final, desperate effort. The ship screamed in their minds, not in fear, but in triumph. It had found something, seen a pattern that no one else could see. But using that knowledge would come at a terrible price. Through their connection, they all understood what needed to be done. The Star Voyager had discovered a way to defeat the void, but it would mean sacrificing everything they'd become. Captain Lee looked at her crew, saw the same understanding in their eyes. They had come too far to turn back now. "Do it," she commanded, her voice steady, despite the tears in her eyes. The Star Voyager began its final transformation, preparing to make the ultimate sacrifice to save the galaxy. But as the ship gathered its power for one last desperate gambit, none of them could have predicted what would happen next. The Star Voyager's final transformation was unlike anything the crew had ever experienced. The ship's hull became pure energy, existing in all dimensions at once. Through their mental connection, they felt it drawing power not just from its engines, but from the fabric of spacetime itself. "The ship," old Joe whispered, tears streaming down his face. "She's turning herself into a new kind of reality. A pattern the void can't break down, because it's constantly changing, constantly recreating itself." The crew watched in awe as their vessel began to glow with impossible light. The void approached, drawn to this new source of energy, this new pattern it had never encountered before. "Everyone to your stations," Captain Lee ordered, though stations had become a meaningless concept. The bridge was now a sphere of pure thought and energy, the crew existing as patterns of light within it. "Whatever happens next, we face it together." The Star Voyager's consciousness touched each of their minds one last time, sharing its love, its gratitude, its determination. Then it began to expand, its energy reaching out toward the void like fingers of light. Where ship and void met, reality itself hung in the balance. The crew felt the battle through their connection, order against chaos, pattern against emptiness, creation against destruction. The ship was using their human ability to imagine the impossible, combined with Guardian technology and its own evolved consciousness, to rewrite the rules of existence. "It's working," the science officer called out in amazement. Where the ship's energy touched the void, the nothingness began to fill with new patterns, new possibilities. The emptiness was being transformed into something else, not what had been there before, but something entirely new. But the power drain was catastrophic. The crew felt their own life energy being pulled into the ship's systems, felt themselves becoming part of the transformation. Old Joe's theories about space and reality were being proven right in ways he had never imagined, at a cost none of them had been prepared for. "The ship is becoming a bridge," Joe explained, his voice fading as his physical form began to dissolve into pure energy. "A permanent barrier between normal space and the void. But to maintain it." They all understood. The ship would need their consciousness, their human creativity and spirit, to maintain the barrier forever. They would become part of the Star Voyager, guardians of reality itself. Captain Lee looked at her crew one last time, seeing not their physical forms, but the bright patterns of their souls. "It has been an honor," she said simply. The Star Voyager's light grew blindingly bright. The crew felt their individual consciousnesses merging with the ship's, becoming something greater than themselves. Their human understanding of reality combined with Guardian technology and the ship's evolved awareness to create something entirely new, a living wall of creativity and possibility that the void could never break down. The transformation was almost complete when old Joe made one final discovery. Through the ship's enhanced senses, he perceived a pattern within the void itself, something that had been hidden all along. "Wait," he called out, his voice now more energy than sound. "The void, it's not destroying reality. It's trying to communicate. To understand. We don't need to fight it. We need to teach it." The Star Voyager, now more idea than object, reached out to the void with new purpose. Instead of creating a barrier, it offered understanding. Human creativity, Guardian wisdom, and the ship's own evolved consciousness extended toward the darkness, not in battle, but in friendship. And in that moment, everything changed. The rescue team sat in stunned silence as old Jochin finished his story. The Star Voyager's transformed engine room hummed around them, its living metal walls pulsing gently with inner light. "So you see," Joe said quietly, his hand resting on a console that seemed to lean into his touch, "we didn't destroy the void. We helped it understand. And in return, it helped us understand something even greater." The rescue team's scientist leaned forward, her eyes wide with wonder. "What happened to the rest of the crew?" Joe smiled, a deep wisdom in his eyes. "They're here. All of them. Part of the ship now, but also something more. When we reached out to the void, we discovered it wasn't a destroyer, it was a lonely explorer, trying to make sense of a reality it couldn't comprehend. Just like humanity, reaching out into the stars, trying to understand our place in the universe." The ship's walls shimmered, and for a moment, the rescue team thought they saw faces in the patterns of light, the crew of the Star Voyager, transformed but not gone, watching over their old friend. "The Guardians were right about humanity being unique," Joe continued. "But not because we could fight the void. Because we could understand it. Our ability to imagine, to dream, to see patterns in chaos, that's what the universe needed. Not more weapons or barriers, but bridges. Understanding." He stood up, moving with the grace of a much younger man. "The Star Voyager isn't just a ship anymore. She's a teacher, a bridge between different kinds of reality. The technology we brought back isn't just for faster space travel, though it will revolutionize that too. It's for helping humanity take its next step into the universe." The rescue team watched as Joe placed his hand against the living metal wall. Energy flowed between him and the ship, a visible reminder of the deep connection they shared. "But why did only you return physically?" the team's commander asked. "Why not the others?" "Someone had to tell the story," Joe said simply. "Someone had to explain what really happened out there, to help humanity understand what comes next." "The others?" He smiled, feeling his crewmate's presence through the ship's consciousness. they're doing something even more important. They're teaching the Void, the Guardians, and countless other beings about the power of human creativity and understanding. And someday, when humanity is ready, they'll teach us too. The ship's engines hummed a gentle harmony, as if agreeing with his words. The rescue team felt something brush against their minds, a warm welcome, a glimpse of possibilities they had never imagined. "So what happens now?" the commander asked. Old Joe looked out at the stars through the ship's transformed hull. The patterns of space were clearer to him now than they had ever been, full of possibility and promise. "Now," he said, "we begin the real journey." The Star Voyager didn't just change the course of galactic history by saving reality. She changed it by showing us what we could become. Humanity's next great adventure isn't out there in the stars, it's in learning to see the universe and ourselves in entirely new ways. The living ship pulsed with light, ready to begin its new mission. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, the Void, no longer a destroyer but a fellow explorer, moved among the stars, learning and growing, thanks to the crew who had dared to offer understanding instead of fear. Old Jochin smiled, feeling the presence of his transformed crewmates, the ship's evolved consciousness, and the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. The greatest discovery they had made wasn't about space travel or advanced technology. It was the simple truth that the universe's greatest mysteries could be solved not through conflict, but through imagination, creativity, and the courage to reach out in friendship to the unknown. The Star Voyager had indeed changed the course of galactic history, not by winning a war, but by making peace. And that was just the beginning.